Have you ever been in a room full of people watching a game and felt nothing? Not annoyed, not antisocial. Just genuinely, completely unmoved by something that seems to be the most important thing in the world to everyone around you. The score is tied, the clock is running down. People are gripping each other, screaming at the screen, physically unable to sit still. And you are sitting there, maybe checking your phone, maybe wondering what you want to eat later, genuinely puzzled by the intensity happening 3 feet away from you. You do not hate sports. You do not have anything against the people watching. You just do not feel it. The thing that turns grown adults into trembling, weeping, euphoric strangers every weekend simply does not activate in you. And you have probably been told at some point that something is wrong with you for that. Today, we are going to prove that wrong, because the psychology behind people who do not obsess over sports is not a deficiency. It is not a gap in your personality or a failure of your social development. It is a specific, documented, scientifically explainable way that certain brains are wired, and understanding it reveals something genuinely fascinating about how human motivation, identity, and emotion actually work. Let's get into it. Part 1. The brain that doesn't respond to the game. The first thing to understand is that not caring about sports is not a choice in the way most people assume. It is not a decision someone makes, the way you might decide to avoid a particular food or skip a particular genre of film. It runs deeper than preference. It is rooted in how specific brains process certain types of stimulation. Research in psychology identifies a trait called reward sensitivity, the degree to which a person's brain responds to particular types of stimulation with the neurochemical reward that drives continued engagement. For people who become passionate sports fans, the specific combination of elements that sports provide, competition, unpredictability, group identity, physical performance, the stakes of winning and losing, activates the brain's reward circuitry at a high and consistent level. The dopamine system fires, the emotional investment builds. The outcome of a game starts to feel genuinely, physiologically important. For people who do not obsess over sports, that same combination of elements simply does not activate the same response. Not because their reward system is broken, but because it is calibrated differently. The stimuli that sports provide are not the stimuli that their particular brain registers as rewarding. This is not a malfunction, it is variation. The same variation that explains why some people are moved to tears by certain music, and others feel nothing by the same song. Why some people find a particular intellectual problem consuming, and others find it dull. The brain does not respond uniformly to stimulation. It responds selectively, based on its own specific architecture. And that architecture, it turns out, is partly genetic, partly developmental, and significantly shaped by early experience. Part 2. The social identity piece. To fully understand why sports matter so much to so many people, and why they do not matter to others, you have to understand social identity theory. Developed by psychologist Henry Tajfel in the 1970s, social identity theory explains one of the most fundamental human psychological needs: the need to belong to groups and to derive a sense of self from those groups. Human beings are not designed to exist as isolated individuals. Evolutionarily, survival depended on group membership. Being part of a tribe meant safety, resources, cooperation, and protection. And the brain evolved to take group membership seriously, to register it as psychologically significant, to feel genuine emotional investment in the group's success and genuine distress at its failures. Sports teams are, in the modern world, one of the most efficient and accessible mechanisms for satisfying this ancient need. Supporting a team gives you a ready-made group identity, a shared history, a language of reference, a community of millions of strangers who are nevertheless on the same side as you. It produces what researchers call BIRGing, basking in reflected glory, the genuine psychological boost that comes from your group's success, even when you personally contributed nothing to it. When your team wins, your cortisol drops, your testosterone rises, and your sense of self-worth measurably improves. The team's victory becomes, neurologically, something close to your own victory. Now here is what this means for people who do not obsess over sports. They are not people who lack the need for group belonging. That need is universal. They satisfy it through different channels, the passionate community that forms around knowledge, creative subcultures, shared causes, or particular ways of seeing the world. These are functionally identical to sports fandom at the psychological level. Same tribal belonging, same shared language, same emotional investment. Non-sports people did not opt out of tribalism. They joined a different tribe. Part 3, early exposure and the window that closes here, is a factor that most people have never considered. Sports fandom is almost always formed in childhood, and the window during which sports can become emotionally significant, genuinely loaded with meaning. Memory and identity closes relatively early in development. Think about what creates a passionate sports fan. It is almost never simply watching a game as an adult and deciding to care. It is the father who took them to their first stadium. The Saturday mornings watching the game as a family ritual. The jersey they wore to school that marked them as part of something. The first time they felt the electricity of a crowd and understood viscerally what collective excitement feels like. These are not just experiences. They are formative emotional memories, the kind that the brain encodes with particular intensity during the developmental years when identity is being constructed. The team becomes associated with safety, belonging, family, and the particular warmth of being a child who is part of something. For children who did not have those experiences, whose households were not organized around sports, whose early social environments did not treat games as emotionally significant events, the neural encoding simply did not happen. The pathways that would have made sports emotionally loaded were never built. And by adulthood, it is largely too late to build them from scratch. You can intellectually appreciate sports. You can understand the strategy, respect the athleticism, follow the narratives. But the visceral, unreasonable, identity-level emotional investment that defines fandom, that requires early formation that did not occur. This is not a loss, it is simply a developmental fact. The same process that makes certain people permanently passionate about sports is the same process that makes certain people permanently passionate about music, science, literature, or any other domain that their early environment treated as emotionally significant. The passion did not fail to form, it formed in a different direction. Part 4. Personality and cognitive style, beyond reward sensitivity and early exposure. Personality structure plays a significant role in who becomes a sports obsessive and who does not. Research using the Big Five personality model reveals consistent patterns. People who score high on openness to experience, intellectual curiosity, aesthetic sensitivity, preference for abstract thinking, tend to be less drawn to sports and more toward creative and intellectual pursuits. Not because they are superior, but because sports operates primarily in the physical and social concrete. The core emotional experience of fandom is visceral and immediate, and that is not where the high-openness brain finds its most reliable reward. People high in conscientiousness tend to invest emotional energy in outcomes they can personally influence. Watching others compete for outcomes outside your control is less satisfying when your reward system runs on personal agency. And people lower in sensation-seeking, the appetite for intense, novel, high-stimulation experience, simply find competitive sports less engaging. Not aversive, just not particularly rewarding. None of these are deficiencies. They are profiles, and they are, in many cases, the same profiles that produce scientists, artists, writers, and independent thinkers. Part 5. What non sports people are actually like. 3 misunderstandings come up constantly. First, they are antisocial. They are not. Research shows no correlation between sports disinterest and social difficulty. Non-sports people form deep, loyal communities, just organized around ideas, creative pursuits, and shared values rather than team affiliations. Second, they are cold or unfeeling. They are not. Their emotional depth is frequently greater than average. What they lack is not emotional capacity. It is the specific response to the specific stimuli that sports provide. Many non-sports people are moved intensely by music, ideas, literature, or creative work. The emotional bandwidth is not narrower, it is pointed elsewhere. Third, they would care if they just gave it a real chance. This is the most persistent and most incorrect assumption. You cannot manufacture passion through repeated exposure to something your reward system does not register as meaningful. Intellectual appreciation is possible. The identity-level obsession that defines fandom requires neurological and developmental conditions that either were present early or were not. Part 6. What both sides get wrong about each other. Sports fans often misread non-sports people as arrogant, as if their disinterest is a judgment on the people who do care. It almost never is. Non-sports people are not thinking, how can you care about something so trivial? They are usually thinking, I genuinely do not understand what you are experiencing. There is often a quiet envy of the communal joy of fandom that they have never had reliable access to. Non-sports people often misread sports fans as shallow, as if the intensity of investment in a game signals a lack of depth. This is equally wrong. The psychology of committed fandom is genuinely complex. The loyalties run deep. The social bonds formed through shared fandom are real and durable. And the capacity to lose yourself completely in something, to feel the stakes of an outcome with your whole body, is a form of emotional richness. Not poverty. Both sides are looking at the same fundamental human need for passion, for belonging, for something that makes life feel vivid and significant, and satisfying it in different ways. The form is different, the function is identical. Outro: you do not obsess over sports. And you never needed to. The passion that fills other people's worlds through games and teams and scores, yours went somewhere else. Into whatever domain your particular brain, formed by your particular history, found genuinely meaningful. That is not a deficiency, that is a direction. The human need for something to care about this much. Something to belong to this completely. Something to feel this intensely, that need is in you. It has always been in you, it just wears different clothes. If this video finally explained something you have never quite been able to articulate, share it with someone who has spent years telling you that you should care about the game. Leave a comment below. What do you obsess over instead of sports? I read every single one. Subscribe for new psychology content every week. Until next time, find your game. You are already playing it.